Last week's summer weather streak was pretty nice if you could manage to put the impending doom of climate change aside. But these days, the more seasonally appropriate misery and rain might have you dreaming of an escape. And based on these photos, there's a part of Greece, look at that, that's jumping to the top of my to-travel list. Joining me is the man who took those and has plenty more vacation experiences to share, including where to find the most Christmassy town in America. I'd call it lovingly hell on earth. And what type of traveler not to be. That, of course, would be, I don't mean not to be him, that would be globe travel writer Christopher Muther. I didn't get that quite right, but hi, Christopher, nice to see you.
Hi, good to see you, Mr. Grinch.
Now, one of my dreams in life, and this is totally true, was to do an overnight train thing through a beautiful part of the country, go to the dining car, have dinner at a white, white tablecloth kind of thing. You've destroyed those dreams. Now, there are two trips you took. One was New York to Savannah, the Silver Meteor. Tell us about that, leaving out any reference to fecal matter, which you have in your story.
Technically, it's fecal mist.
Excuse me, thank you.
I can explain that process for you.
So how horrible was that New York to Savannah?
It was so bad I couldn't bring myself to write about it, which for me is really saying something. It was just miserable.
You had a roommate, I think it's called, that you likened to a prison cell. Is that not correct?
It really was a prison cell because there was a stainless steel toilet right beside the seat that folded down into a bed. So all I could think about was the years of people using the toilet right beside the bed because the cabin hadn't been renovated in probably, I'm being generous, 30 years.
Wow. So did you, because I mean this sincerely, you're a responsible journalist, rather than trashing Amtrak, you said, let's give it another go, which is why you did the Seattle to Chicago thing?
That's exactly it, because I thought this one experience, although hellish, it can't be like this every other. I mean, the employees were kind of complaining about what a lousy company they were working for. It was just like, they don't know who I am, obviously, but no customer wants to hear that. So between the prison cell, the service, they had just gotten rid of the white tablecloths and the dining car. And this was pre-pandemic, so there was no reason. And they were handing out foil tins of food.
This is post-pandemic. Post-pandemic.
Pre.
Wait, your trip was pre?
The Silver Meteor
was that was pre. Oh, I didn't know that.
And then the Empire Builder, which was the one that was the second chance, which I did last month, was the post.
And that was not so hot either. Correct. What you basically said is the scenery is beautiful and the train's a great place to see it from, but you weren't so crazy about the train out there either, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was more into that ride than I was the previous one because I didn't have a toilet in my room, so that helped. I booked another roomette, which is the smaller version.
What did you do, just lean out the window? Or what did you do? Obviously,
and the train was moving?
Exactly. Thank you.
No,
Sorry I said that. Go ahead.
I was trying to spread the fecal mist a little more easily.
Let's keep it going here. Yeah. So, but I am right. I mean, what was the view? What did you get to see that was fabulous?
It went through Glacier National Park in Montana and an observation car at sunrise. And there's these trees called larch trees, which are sort of pine trees that aren't evergreen, and they're turning bright yellow with the snow-capped mountains. It was fantastic. Yeah.
Okay, so when most people say they spend time at Leavenworth, they mean hard time, like in a prison in Leavenworth, Kansas.
Right, like you did, yeah.
You spent time in Leavenworth, Washington. I guess that was on the way to Seattle, which I'd never heard of before. And it is, what is it, the most Christmassy? Was that your terminology?
Yeah, it was
town
actually,
in America?
there was a survey that was done, and it was voted the most Christmassy town in America.
And why is it? What happened? What is it?
Well, it's sort of like it's actually just like being in a Bavarian village. And, normally you would think, oh, it's hokey, you'll be able to tell. But these people are committed to making it like a Bavarian village. Even the street signs are in that font that you see everywhere. And it's just, there's a nutcracker museum, there's a reindeer farm. I mean, there's 21 miles of Christmas lights at the holidays. You can't get a more Christmassy town.
I love Christmas. It sounds like one of the worst things I've ever heard. Is it as bad as it sounds or no?
Well, I mean, it depends. For instance, you would go and you would have a bad attitude.
Exactly.
And you would not like it. I normally would be a cynical guy with something like this, but I just thought, you know what? I'm here, I'm going to live it.
And so, like, are all is it 2,400 people, is that what you wrote?
Yeah, it's a really tiny town.
Are all the town residents into the shtick, or are they? Or?
I mean, weirdly, everyone I spoke with is into it. I don't know if they just happen to be nice there, but I spent an inordinate amount of time at the gingerbread factory.
Oh my goodness.
And everyone there was more than happy to talk Christmas. And there was like giant ornament store, obviously, called Kris Kringle, no E.
Of course.
And everyone there was like in the Christmas spirit, and I was there in October.
Okay, so you wrote another piece, the title of which, I know you don't write the titles, but the title accurately reflects this: Everything I Need to Know About Travel I Learned from James Bond. Now, for people who think that's sort of just pure rhetoric, we have some proof that everything he did learn about travel was from James Bond. When Christopher joined us as James Bond from the Mediterranean Sea in July of 2021, here he is.
Hang on a second.
That's hopeless.
So
That was one of my favorite moments. That was only 4 seconds there, but you were on the Mediterranean in a tux, slightly tipsy, drinking wine, a la James Bond, correct?
Yes, and I was with two women called Bambi and Thumper. So it was just like James Bond.
So
just like.
So what did you when it said this everything I learned so and so? Give me like run down the list quickly. What are some of the things you did learn? Because actually some of them were I wouldn't say serious, but legit. Like what'd you learn?
No, I mean the thing about going off the beaten path, I think, is a big one. Where James Bond does that a lot. You know, he'll go to the big tourist sites, but then he'll sort of find the quiet places where he's usually recuperating from bullet wounds, which I don't recommend getting shot.
I understand that.
Traveling by yourself. You know, no one is better at traveling by himself and making new friends like Bambi and Thumper, like James Bond. And I think people should not be afraid to travel by themselves when they're out.
By the way, we've talked. By the way, you don't have to mention Bambi and Thumper again. Twice was plenty, just so you know.
Yeah.
Thank you. So you're a big solo traveler, not a traveler, and you often write your husband is upset because you're not home more often, or you're not home more quickly, and that's sweet
Or
sort of
so
throwaway.
he says, yes.
Apparently, I was going to say I've spoken. But traveling solo is a special deal. I've told you before, I'm a little intimidated, particularly in places where the language is different. I know it's childish, but you break through all this stuff. How?
I mean, honestly, it's not childish. It's just something that we're conditioned to. We've always vacationed with our family or our spouses. When you're by yourself, you find that people approach you because, one, they feel sorry for you. So, you know, not Bambi and Thumper, but their friend Plenty O'Toole will come over and chat me up. No, but seriously, like when I was on the train, I would meet people. When I go on cruise ships, that's a big one. I always end up with surrogate families. It's crazy. So I find that even though I'm traveling by myself, I'm seldom by myself.
I admire the quality, I really do, and I hope someday I have it. So you wrote a piece about social media and travel that is maybe the most pathetic thing I've read about social media since Elon Musk took over Twitter.
Ooh, boy, that's bad.
Can you talk about, people who apparently care more about the response they get, likes and comments about their trip, than the trip itself. That's essentially what they say.
That's it, yeah. There's like, 40% of people, like millennials and Gen Z. It's like 25% of everybody else, which is also shocking. But yeah, it's what their memory of the trip is how many people liked or commented on their photos. So for instance, if they posted something, it had only got like 5 likes. They'll come away thinking this was not a successful vacation.
Even if they loved the vacation when they were there.
Yeah, I mean, that was what this survey found. And, you know, it's one survey, but I have plenty of friends who do this. They're guilty of overposting. You know, I'll just come up with a fake name, Eric Kent, who does this quite a bit. And
Two friends of mine, since you said a name, Bambi and Thumper. They do. They post it all the time.
Yeah.
They do. It's incredible. But you have great advice, by the way, buried in this column about these pathetic losers who care more about comments than the actual thing. As you say, never post photographs until you're home, because if you post them while you're traveling, you're going to check to see the likes and comments, and it's going to spoil your vacation.
Yeah, I always feel like it's better to try to be in the moment more than just posting on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, you know. And then one of the other things that I said years ago in another column was that for security purposes. I mean, when you're posting to social media, you're basically saying to everybody, look, I'm not home.
Break into my house.
Yeah.
That's a very good point, by the way. One last thing. Let's end on a bright note. The Peloponnesians, is that how you say that part of Greece?
Yes, and I love that every time we've talked about
I ask
this,
you the same thing.
Yes.
Well, because I'm nervous I'm going to mispronounce it, but Peloponnesians, that's part of Greece. And it's the less traveled part of Greece. Am I not right?
No, you're completely right.
And so what stood out that made you love it as much as you apparently did? What was the big deal?
You know, I've been to Greece a bunch of times, mostly the islands, which is where everyone goes.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the opposite of Mykonos and those places because it was quiet.
You took all these pictures, right?
I did, yeah.
They're beautiful, actually. They're really
that was
beautiful.
Olympia. That was just up there, which is, you know, where the Olympic Games took place.
That's why it's called Olympia, by
Yeah,
the way. Yeah.
smart.
Thank you. And so what does it have to recommend it? Is because it's less traveled? Is that part of the appeal or what?
I think it's a combination of things. Definitely because it's less traveled, but also it has incredible historic sites. It has mountains. It has beaches. It has some of the best preserved Byzantine cities in Europe. It's completely overlooked. You know, when I went there to a health retreat escape, and everyone there was Australian or British or yeah, just from everywhere but the United States. So people, I feel like, don't know about it, and I felt guilty writing about it
Because people will know about
people
it.
will know about it, but thankfully no one reads what I write or follows my advice.
I actually read it. And by the way, before you go, for people who need like a used computer, when will you be traveling next? Exactly. Chris
Yes.
from Muther, love to see you. Thank you so much.
Great as
Brilliant travel
always.
writer, Boston Globe.